Hi, good day, I'm Sandeep and you are watching The Indian Weekender. This is our special show, Walk in the Park. In this show, we go to meet a politician, a political leader, an MP or minister in the government, preferably in their own electorate, in an open environment, as we have done previously. And we go and talk to them more about their political journey, political aspirations, their challenges, and their portfolios as well. So as a part of this special series, today we are here in a special park. If you can see around, and if you have not yet figured out, this park is Hamilton Gardens. So I'm assuming that you would have judged by now, you would have guessed by now that I am in Hamilton electorate. I'm going to meet an MP. He's a Kiwi Indian MP and no prizes for guessing that he is Dr. Gaurav Sharma. As we all know that this interview was scheduled months before today, but in the last couple of days, especially in the week, New Zealand's political environment has erupted with many issues where Dr. Gaurav Sharma is raising those issues. So what Dr. Gaurav Sharma has done today, he has kept his words. He has not cancelled his appointment. He has kept his word. So we will have this conversation today, and we will see what we can get out of him about this very important issue that he is raising, issue of bullying in the New Zealand political processes in the parliament. So let's go and let's meet Dr. Gaurav Sharma.
Hi, Sandeep. How are you? Good to see you.
Very good afternoon. Very good morning to you, Gaurav. Very good. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great. Welcome to Hamilton.
Yeah, surely it is. And it has been a difficult week. Last week, I'm assuming. How are you feeling now?
I am feeling really good. If anything, I think the last few months and years have been difficult. But I've slept really well in the last few days. And everything is really good. I've got a lot of good support.
Right. Yep. I was going to ask you that question, that after you have raised this volatile issue, have you been well supported, both within party, outside, in family, and all other environment?
Oh, definitely. Look, a lot of family support, a lot of volunteer support, support of Labour members, constituents, obviously former patients, colleagues. My phone is just ringing off the hook with a lot of support. And then obviously, people visit home, they visit your office, bringing food. They come and drop in for a conversation. So it's been really good and very well supported.
Perfect. All right. Okay. So if I have to ask you that, would you walk us through what happened in the last week or so, which prompted you to raise this very important burning issue, and we need to see where it's going actually. It's a very fast evolving story. So can you walk us through a little bit more on that?
Yeah, well look, this interview, for example, was scheduled quite a long time ago.
Sure.
And first of all, I do want to apologize because I remember, after I got elected, you wanted to do an interview here in Hamilton Garden.
Sure.
And, and I've been saying for a while, let's do it. But it was a few months ago that we agreed on doing this. So I guess now what's happened is, basically, I wanted to keep my appointment with you, as I've kept all the other appointments, whether it's constituent clinics, whether it's market that I usually go to. But as you know, today is the Labour caucus meeting at 2:30. So obviously, I guess it's important that I follow the due process. And that's what I've been trying to follow for the last 1.5 years as well, whether it's going through people in parliamentary services, whether it's going through people in the Labour Party whip's office or the Prime Minister's office. For me, it is important to follow the process. I followed it for a long time, and it came to a point where obviously I had to go public with some of the information. But I guess I don't want to say too much about it and tame the issue because, as we said, today is the 2:30 Labour Party caucus meeting.
Sure. No, I completely agree. Completely understand that this is a fast evolving issue. So let's dial back the clock and let's start our conversation from where we agreed actually when you created a history in 2020 by becoming the first ethnic electorate MP, I would say, and more specifically first Kiwi Indian electorate MP. So how was those moments? Can you just walk us through in 2020 when you won elections and here this Hamilton West electorate?
Yeah, well look, when I ran for the election, I know a lot of MPs obviously do polling to see whether they're going to win, they're going to lose, what does it sound like. And I always said, if say we do polling and it says that, you're definitely going to win, then sometimes you become a bit lazy. And other times, if it says, well, actually, you might not win, then you give up hope. So we didn't do actually any polling at all, and all we focused on was the hard work and doing the mahi on the ground. So what that means is, we did 15,000 door knocks and phone calls. We went to lots of markets. We did a lot of events. We did a lot of sign waving. We had 300 plus signs around the city, and we did a really good campaign. And a lot of it is thanks to the volunteers who put their faith and time into me over a long period of time. So we did the hard work, and it was actually on election night when the result comes out. And I remember as the results were coming out, it's hard to sort of it's a bit surreal to realize that you might win. And I was saying, but I think it's probably just because the early polling stations are coming through. So we still have to wait. And I went to a radio station, Free FM, our local radio station, and they're the ones who gave me the results. I think we were halfway through. But even then I didn't believe it. And then when I went back to our party office, where all the members were meeting, the members of other candidates who were running against me came to congratulate me, but it takes a while to actually, I think, just hit it and appreciate that you have actually won the electorate. Yeah.
And one thing that probably I just heard from you when you're saying, I'm tempted to ask you that you are one of those person who is able to control his nerves and not jump the gun, so you just wanted to wait for the result to come. That probably tells a lot about your personality, isn't it? That you generally don't get easily excited, or you're able to hold your nerves. Is it fair call? Is it a fair assessment?
Well, I'll give you two funny examples. One was when I got selected, because selection in itself is not an easy process. And when we got selected, it was a long drawn process. And after we got selected, I was like, all right, then campaign from tomorrow morning. And my campaign manager and the voting coordinator were both crying, like literally in tears. And they were all just like, I can't believe you're not crying or showing any emotion, not even excitement. And I said, yeah, but this is just one of the many steps. That's next thing is we got to do the campaign. But then even when I won, it was kind of sad. And they were just saying the same thing again. Like it's not like you've taken a breath and just gone, okay, I won, I'm just going to take a day off. We're like, well, from tomorrow we start the work. And I think we were at the markets right after that as well. And another example I'll give you is there's a community event that happens every last Friday of every month in Hamilton. And I've been going to it for like quite a few years now. And I'm the only candidate who went. After I won, I flew back from Wellington, went to the event again. And even now, I don't think I might have missed one of those. So even then people keep saying, you haven't stopped. And that's, that's how it is, right? Like even if you achieve something.
Maybe you want to say to them, it's just a beginning. It's just a beginning, isn't it?
Well, I guess that too, but I guess what I was saying is, as you were saying, I as a doctor, I don't sort of spend too much time going, I'm too excited or too anxious about it. You just got to keep going.
Fair enough. Okay. Now let us go back a little bit more before 2020 or maybe before 2017 elections, when you put your hand first and for this electorate here.
Yeah.
So we want to know a little bit more about what were the driving motivation that brought you into politics?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I guess. I've worked around different places and lived around different places, whether it's when I was getting my education, whether it was when I was just traveling, and some of the places that I was at initially, I realized that as a doctor, you were only making difference one-to-one. If you want to change the system, you got to figure out, for example, say even if you're setting up a hospital in a developing country, how do you raise funds? How do you run an organization? How do you hire people? And that's what motivated me to go to an MBA.
But how do you manage people as well?
Well, that's right. That's a very important part of it. So, as you know, I went and did an MBA in Washington at the George Washington University. And then, when I was there, it was the same time as Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump were going through an election. There was a lot of stuff happening all around the world. But I thought that, politics was one way to be able to make a wider change, because again, doctors do such good work, but is there a way that you could affect the whole health system? I mean, just to give you an example, or an education system, or an immigration system. So that was the motivation behind going into politics, to be able to help make a positive difference to the system.
Sure. Now, talking about those motivation that brought you into politics, and you have been into this privileged position, I would say, of being a representative of Hamilton West electorate for 1.5 years into the parliament. So if I have to ask you to do a reassessment of that 1.5 years of your work in the parliament, how would you rate that? How would you recall that? Have you been able to achieve what you set out to achieve, actually?
So I guess there's multiple parts to it, obviously. Yeah, the first one is around what do you do in your electorate. So in my electorate, you will see I've done 52 constituent clinics. By the end of this month, I've done 52 constituent clinics, which means we go out to marae, churches, community centres, after-hours pharmacy, weekends, weekdays, lunchtime, library, and the whole idea is to give access to people, to our constituents who can come there and talk about their issues. Every single one of these clinic has been completely booked, and I know often the feedback I get is, like a lot of people don't get that access in other places. They don't get as many constituent clinic options as well. So, we've been trying in that front at least to make sure that our constituents gets the best service. We've also been able to achieve a lot for our constituents. Again, I guess sometimes we don't actually get to talk about what actually difference do you make. So, for example, during the phase of COVID in MIQ, one of the things was that, for example, the hospitals had specialists that they had been able to recruit from overseas, but they weren't able to get MIQ spots for 6 months. So we helped them, get the MIQ spots so the doctors could come in. I had nurses who had split families. Their partner was overseas. They were here for a long time. They were working in a COVID ward. But they were struggling because their family members weren't here. They got a one-off special visa, and the husband came. And she sent me a photograph from the airport, and she was in tears, saying thank you for helping. Just about 2-3 weeks ago, we had somebody from my ethnic community whose dad's passed away, mum is by herself, the rest of the family siblings live here. And it'll be very hard for the mum to go back. And even though the parent category visas were closed, the mum ended up getting a special visa and residency, so she's now going to stay here. Again, and so we were able to help that. So there's a lot of work that we have been able to do. Our constituents have been very happy. We've got a lot of positive feedback. But the most important thing for me in the constituency has been to increase access, to really make sure that people don't feel like they can't find their MP. And sometimes people have even said, look, I don't have any issues, but I see you at the markets almost every weekend. I know if I need to find you, I can get hold of you.
All right, okay. Right? So that I understand that gives you a lot of satisfaction with what you have been able to achieve in your electorate, right?
That's right. And in some ways, it's also like being like a GP, right? You have a 15-20 minute appointment. You're trying to find a solution and help people. So that works really, really well. And then the other thing in the constituency is, actually being transparent about what sort of workload do you have. Because that's another thing, right? People say, what does a member of parliament do? So to give you an example of that, so for example, for our what we do is we did an analysis of all the cases that were coming through our office, hundreds and thousands of cases, and we did some graphs around this many cases were related to immigration, this many cases were related to MIQ, this many cases were related to the DHP or council or crime or policing. But that gives people an idea of what exactly is happening in the office. So people again found that useful to see. So that's again one of the examples. So that was obviously the constituency side of things. Then obviously there is the stuff in Wellington. I've been on the Health Select Committee. It's been a busy committee, especially in COVID. Lots of important bills have come through it. And I'm going to give you an example of a bill, where I myself felt like, are you making a difference? Yes, you are. We had a bill come through where an agency was going to be set up, a new agency was going to be set up, and there were like 72 clauses in that bill, and 2 of the clauses said that this agency could make an urgent decision, but there's no definition of an urgent decision, and the only way for you to challenge it is if it goes to court. So you can't challenge the agency, but anything can be urgent. Right? Okay. So I said, well, that doesn't make any sense for a common man. Does that mean they have to spend $50,000 just to, be heard? And people had already gone through it, and then they went back. They had a look at it, and they said, well, that makes sense, right? So went back, and both the clauses were removed. right? So the idea is, right, maybe that's made a bigger difference than if I worked as a doctor for 6 months or a year.
Sure, definitely.
So that's something that I've been quite passionate about. Another thing I've done is I recently did quite a big report on NZREX, the foreign doctors who come from overseas. Quite a substantial report. And what I did is...
Just want to give a little bit of heads up to our viewers out there that NZREX is an important institution, basically, if institution might be the right word. Like there are a lot of doctors who are overseas educated, and they come over here and they are not qualified legitimately to straight away start working as doctor, and they are required to pass an exam, and often it is a very, very big stumbling block, and it affects a huge number of efficient doctors trained overseas, particularly in the ethnic communities, ethnic migrant communities, including in Kiwi Indian communities. There are hundreds of doctors out there who are unfortunately driving Uber, or who end up driving Uber or taxis and doing other odd jobs, but not contribute in the health sector, even during this COVID pandemic. So Indian Weekender has been raising that issue very passionately, and I think that's what Dr. Gaurav Sharma is talking about.
That's right. So I mean, look, for NZREX doctors, basically, when I used to work in Auckland as a doctor, I was working in terms of training them for free, just because I really felt like, these people were coming to New Zealand, actually wanted to be part of the workforce, but just couldn't just find the right way to do it. So I've written this report to the Minister. The idea was, again, to talk about first the overall issue, how many numbers, how many people, what the problem is. And in doing so, what I did is I actually caught up with a couple of senior colleagues. One of them used to be a surgeon I used to work for, who was recently the chief medical officer at the ministry. I met up with the former person who used to run training at Auckland Hospital. He now works for Southern Cross. And, so to actually really understand how can we set a pathway for these doctors. Because what happens is, just to give you a bit more information on that, is so some comparable countries, for example, you come from UK, you automatically can work here. You come from India, you have to take this exam. But before you take the NZREX exam, you have to take either a USMLE exam, a UK-based PLAB exam, or Australian-based exam as well. So one of those three for
which is again cost
yes,
increasing.
And then you have to take a practical one, which is the NZREX. So there's quite a lot of cost. But for our doctors, it can take 3, 4, 5 years easily before they actually pass those exams.
And even after passing their exam, probably they have to find a place.
Well, that's the biggest problem. So what I was talking about is, right, like once they've passed the exam, they've spent a lot of time here, they've committed themselves to it. What is the pathway for them to get a job? And the problem is, for a long time, what we've done is we've always seen as they're coming to a better country, and it's their problem to get a job. What I was trying to say here was, but if you think about how much money you spend in hiring or training a doctor, a medical student, it's a fraction of the cost. If you take these people who've already passed their exam, we know they are safe, and we just try to sort of give them a pathway to integrate into the system.
And that makes a lot of common sense as well.
Well, a lot of things will do, but that's not how politics works, I guess. So what ended up happening was, sometimes what happens is these doctors can't get a job, and then after 5 years, the NZREX expires as well. So they're back to square one. And don't quote me on this, but I think the number was there were about 96 doctors at the moment who haven't got a job, who have passed this, and that's a big workforce. And as you said, during COVID, what I was saying is, even if you don't want them to work, say, in a hospital, can they work in a CBAC center and do swabs?
Definitely.
Can they do vaccinations?
Yes.
And that workforce can then go and do elective surgery. There's a lot of that.
Of course.
So if you would have
that question has been raised many times because what we are doing right now, probably what New Zealand is doing right now, in the middle of this COVID pandemic, with the staff crisis in the health sector, probably defies common sense. And probably we are letting this important workforce, which is already in the country, trained overseas, but they have qualified exams, and still that is being wasted, isn't it? So I would like to congratulate you on that, Dr.
And so
Gaurav.
we did get the outcome.
Oh, is it?
So the ministers recently announced that there is now going to be a bridging program for NZREX graduates. And the idea is, again, to give them that pathway where they can actually start training. And we can integrate it. So obviously not all the recommendations have been considered.
Right, well that's a news for me as well.
That's a step. I think it was announced a few weeks ago. But it's a positive step towards doing that. So I mean that's one sort of policy thing I can give you an example of. But there's lots of other things, where you talk to different members, ministers, on bills. You talk about how things can be improved. So I've been trying to do that.
Sure. Well, yeah, that's probably, I would say that that's something because you're a doctor and you are passionate about it and you're connected, and then probably people, those doctors who are trained overseas, they naturally come to you and they look forward to have that kind of leadership and lobbying in the parliament. So you have done your part over there. The other thing that would come naturally to you, I'm assuming, being of Kiwi Indian descent, being an ethnic migrant in this country. So I'm assuming that a lot of Kiwi Indians and ethnic migrants who are living beyond your electorate, that is Hamilton West, all around in New Zealand, they would have a lot of expectations from you, isn't it? On very important issues, maybe around like migrants who are stuck overseas throughout the last 2 odd years, and immigration-related issues. Does it happen to you?
Well, it does, and obviously, I guess sometimes people want to talk to people, who maybe look like them or whatever it is. And I'm sure we have, our Pacifica communities in Hamilton who would rather talk to a Pacifica MP somewhere else. There's always that element. And one thing I've tried to do is, obviously try to connect with communities outside of Hamilton and Auckland, because often Hamilton, is my electorate. I get to speak to communities here, but Auckland is, the hub of ethnic communities. Go outside these places and canvass other people and see what their problems are. Give you an example. I went to Taupo after I got elected and caught up with about 25, 30 businesses, Indian businesses. They'd never met an MP, any MP, any MP.
Okay.
And most of them had been here 20, 30 years. They own, restaurants, cafes, pizzerias, all sorts of stuff. And then when I got there, they thought, oh, you look you're a lot younger than we thought you would. But they were just like, what do you do? How can you help us? And I was hearing them talk about how in Taupo, for example, they don't have a university or a polytech. So most students end up going outside Taupo. So after 16, 17, most people leave. So their biggest problem is workforce, because the kids move, and because people aren't coming from overseas, or they weren't at that time, how do they sort of keep their businesses open? Just to give you an example. Similarly, I went to Christchurch and I went to Gurudwara, and they said, we haven't seen our local MPs since the election. And you wouldn't believe this, for 3 hours we had to do a constituent clinic promptly, just spontaneously.
Okay.
They basically gave us a room. I sat there with pen and paper, another person helped us, community leader, and we just went from one person to another privately, not just a public meeting and we'll do something about it. Actually getting down their case numbers and files and what's happening, and assisted them. So did that in Christchurch. I went to Queenstown and met up with the ethnic communities there. Nobody's ever gone and celebrated Lodi with them ever. So did that. I went to New Plymouth and caught up with them. Went to the mosque and went to the met the Indian Association. So lots of organization, I guess, across the country that I've been traveling to talk about and to hear. I think yes, obviously one of the roles of a member of parliament is to speak for their constituents and speak in parliament, but the other thing is also to hear what other people have to say.
Sure. Now I'm also tempted to ask you, after hearing you, that probably you've touched base with probably different types of communities, their issues, their problem. There is one thing that I cannot stop myself asking about is temporary migrants who were in this country, but unfortunately they were locked out of New Zealand borders because of New Zealand's closed borders. And it seems that probably many of them have been permanently or probably irreversibly locked. That issue has been raised many times with different government officials, ministers, and to be fair to government and ministers of immigration, they have done a little bit over there, here and there. But now, today, as of now, the borders have been opened, but there is still a very small but significant numbers of temporary migrants who have lost their visas. It has expired. So what do you think about them? Are you able to raise their voice? Are you able to lobby for them?
Yeah, so look how normally it works is, if there are issues like that, and with me, I will raise all the issues, whether I agree with them or not, because at the end of the day, you don't have to agree with everything, but you do need to be able to support your constituents across the board and say, this is what's happening. I can give you many other examples. I'm in support of most of Three Waters reform. I took a petition from somebody who said, they don't want Three Waters, but why would I not? Because I'm the constituent MP, right? They live here, they gave it to me, and I took that, right? But I've also taken a lot of petitions I do support. So when it comes to those migrants, many of them have touched base with me, have touched base with you, many people, And I have talked about them at all the right avenues, to see what can be done to support them as well. I guess where we are at the moment, and I did meet with the Minister of Immigration a few weeks ago as well. I understand that there's quite a few things that are being looked at, all sorts of, obviously the ministers change, and they are looking at that, and it's obviously their process too. But one of the things I remember, I think the minister said, was that people are still able to reapply. So there's obviously not an automatic, if you were here, you come back. But people should be able to reapply.
Well, that is a stand that this minister and the previous minister has taken, which is it does make sense. But the pain of those temporary migrants who are stuck overseas is that they have already invested tens of thousands of dollars, both. Most of them have been international students in this country. So first they have invested as international students, then they have been part of the workforce. They have paid their taxes, and then they have actually built a life over here as well. So they have, from individual's perspective, they have already invested probably tens of thousands of dollars already. So going through the rigors of applying again a fresh visa and again coming back and starting taking another shot on building a new life is a very cost intensive and sometimes very prohibitive for them. And that's why probably what they're demanding is requesting is another round of kindness, another round of compassion, and maybe just restoring of their visas. So do you agree with that demand?
Well, I guess, as I said, I've taken the demands to the ministers. I have been talking to people who message me, and I appreciate that it's not easy for them. And for some of them, they might have sold a farm in India to come and, live in New Zealand, or they might have taken a loan from, their parents might have taken a loan or something like that. So there's lots of elements, to it, where you said rightly, people are financially affected by it too. So I've been trying my best to talk about it, and I guess at the end of the day, it is for the minister to consider those options, to listen to what people are saying and what feedback they are receiving from their MPs.
Perfect. Okay. On that note, probably I'm just tempted to take another stroll in this beautiful Hamilton garden. And I think, probably I would say that we have been fortunate. We have been fortunate enough today because the weather has been very kind. Because when we started, probably it was going to drizzle or something. But I think the sun god is very kind. I'm not sure it is just in Hamilton here or just on you. You will have to figure it out. Right. Okay. Now, couple of last questions, Gaurav. If I have to ask you to choose between one of those emotions to define how you felt in last 1.5 years of your tenure in Parliament, happy, sad?
Happy.
Perfect. All right. Okay. If I have to ask you one more thing, that given the current political environment we are currently, and the issue that you have raked and the accompanied side effects or effects, how confident you feel yourself that you will be able to achieve what you set out to achieve before entering into politics?
Well, I guess, from my perspective, I have to do my best, right, in order to raise the voice, that people have given me. And one thing I keep saying is, right, if I can't raise my voice to support myself or for myself, then how can I raise it for my constituents, right? If I can't stand up for myself, how will I ever be able to stand up for my constituents, right? And that's a very important thing.
That is very important, very apt, and probably it's time to conclude. I think that's very aptly said. So we wish you all the best, Gaurav.
Thanks so much,
thanks for keeping your promise.
It's such a pleasure to have you here in Hamilton. I know we talked about it for over 18 months, and we finalized it about 2 months ago.
Surely, definitely.
Such a pleasure. Thank you.
It's a pleasure for us as well. Thanks for having us here, and wish you all the best in your journey, in your endeavors. We wish you all the best. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
So that was Dr. Gaurav Sharma. As we have said many times, that this interview was scheduled a couple of months ago, and Dr. Gaurav Sharma has decided to honor that obligation. And so yes, he took a principled stand to speak very sparingly on the issue that he is very passionate about, to follow the process. Apart from that, we had a good discussion. We understood what he is standing for in politics. That's all. So this is our Walk in the Park series. Indian Weekender will be continuing this series and will be reaching out to other MPs in our electorate, in our New Zealand Parliament, to understand their journey. Thank you very much.